Welcome to Coffee Conversations with Forge Breast Cancer Survivor Center. I am Janita Holt, and I'm here with Salaam Green this morning. We are so excited to be talking about journaling and holistic healing through journaling with Salaam this morning. And thank you for joining us this morning, Salaam.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. So could we just go ahead and jump into it?
Oh, yes, let's just jump. Yes, we're here.
Yeah, okay.
Good morning.
Could you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Oh, absolutely. Well, I'm very excited to be here and thank you for having me. And I'm so grateful that this is recorded and we are doing this. But my name is Salaam Green. I am the owner of the Literary Healing Arts, and I'll put that in the chat or we'll have it somewhere for you. But I'm a creative writer, a poet, an artist in resident, and a healer. And what I do is I use writing and storytelling and poetry as a healing tool to support people on their healing, wellness, and emotional health journey. And I've been doing that for my business since 2016, but I really believe I've been healing since 1976 when I was born, like what all of us have, and coming into this beautiful world. And I just really love bringing the idea that we can use our voices to heal our lives, that our stories, our voices, the ability to do that is something that I think is so beautiful. So as a writer, as a poet, as an artist in resident at UAB, those are some of the tools that I use to support people in healing and wellness.
Oh, thank you so much. So, can you tell us a little about like what took you on this journey to writing and using the storytelling and the journaling and the poetry to tie that into that holistic healing? How did you get on that?
Yes, absolutely. So I had no idea like this world existed. You know how like you don't know and then you go into this world and you're like, oh, everybody is is holistically healing and there's so many different pathways and journeys. So for me, my background is in education. I was an early childhood teacher and administrator for many, many years. My master's is in early childhood education. So for 15 years or so, I just was in administration as a pre-K teacher and also as a director of many programs and working for the state. And I got burned out. Burned out. And like many people do, you love your job, you love what you do, you love your people. But there's so much burnout in the world. And through that burnout, I also went through my own emotional healing journey. I went through a really major depression. And with depression being such a stigma sometimes in my Black culture, African American culture, at the time, I did not necessarily know where to go or who to talk to, or that it was depression. It's like, oh, I'm sad, I have the blues, I'm burned out, I'm tired. And I didn't know that it was really, something that was chemically, that I needed chemically support with. And also during that time, I went through a traumatic divorce. So when you're having so many cards that are swept from your table at the same time, you think, okay, the card table is still standing. And then the card table, falls and breaks, so the cards are on the floor. Now the card table is on the floor and there's Salaam on the floor. I found a writing class here in Birmingham called Women Writing for a Change. And I sat on this lady's red couch for 2 years and I began to write myself back together again. After the depression, the burnout, and the traumatic divorce, I sat in that space with other women and we began to write poetry and journaling and just what have you. And I began to begin on that journey of using writing as a tool to support me. And as I was sitting on that red couch, I began to think, I believe I really would love to take this red couch metaphorically out to other women like myself. Like there needs to be red couches in everyone's house. It needs to be on every corner. There needs to be a red couch, writing space, in every library and every office, so that we can just go in and have that sacred time for our healing journey, whatever that might look like. So for me, it was my mental health, and it was life, divorce, and trauma, and all those kinds of things that started me on this journey.
Well, I mean, and that's such a wonderful testimony, though, like how you found your peace through pain and how you triumphed through adversity, and finding that tool that worked for you as it relates to picking yourself up and moving through it.
Mhm.
That's wonderful, and thank you for sharing that with us.
Oh, thank you all for listening. I really think for me, it's very important that everything that I do is wrapped around story. I tell people I have a story for that. I have a story for that. Or the minute I know that I go out into the world, when I do go out in the world, then there's going to be some story that's going to be connected to that. And I think our stories is really what connects us. And like you were saying, before we even came here on Zoom about, you having your babies, your 4 children, and wrangling them at this time of the year, and then everybody's so excited we're going back to school, but you know what, we tired. We're tired. And how do we use that? What kind of support mechanisms do we have in place that connects us? Yeah, so thank you for listening.
Yeah, absolutely. And as you mentioned about your agency, Literary Healing Arts Foundation, can you tell us a little bit more about, when you found that agency, what was that process like?
Wow. I still don't know like where it came from. I think, maybe there's this calling, this thing that pulls us, this thing that feeds us. When I was sitting on this lady's red couch, I remember I was writing, and some of the beautiful writers, and I was so intimidated because when I was a little girl, and like I said, I have stories, so I'm going to get to the foundation. I'm going to get to how it started. But when I was a little girl, I remember telling my mom I wanted to be a writer. I want to be a writer. And my mom said, no, you can't write. You won't make any money. You need to be a teacher. And my mom was a teacher for over 30 years, family of teachers. So that's what I did. I went to college and I became a teacher. But somewhere, and I got my English degree. So somewhere deep down inside, all I wanted to do was be a writer. So it wasn't until I was maybe 38 or 39 that I sat on that red couch and I began to write for the first time outside of my journal. And some of those wonderful women writers in that group who I was so intimidated by looked at me and they said, baby girl, you are a poet. You are a storyteller. Your writing is beautiful. And at that time, I had no idea. Poetry, who does that, right? Poet, now, most definitely don't tell your mama you're going to be a poet, right? No. It's like,
Yeah.
what is that all about? And that's where I started. And someone introduced me to Create Birmingham's Co-Starter program, which is in Birmingham. For people, we're in Birmingham, Alabama. So the Co-Starters program, I went to Co-Starters, and through that process, the name Literary Healing came up because I really believe I'm a literary healer, helping people heal through storytelling, writing, poetry, and literature. And I was like, I am a literary healer. I could be that. And in 2016, I started the Literary Healing Arts, where I do workshops, writing coaching, writing to heal sessions, and also training people how to actually take this into their spaces to do this as well.
Well, and that's amazing. And I love that you said like you felt like it was calling you, like this is your calling.
Mm-hmm.
You always felt that in you. So, it's so important to listen to our inner being, and in every process that we're in, especially when we're on that journey to healing. And I know that you mentioned, you provide those coaching and those sessions for literary healing. And how can or how does journaling and storytelling support that healing process?
Oh, absolutely. Every time that I've ever gone to a therapist, and they've oftentimes asked me, well, do you journal and go home and journal? And I was like, I'm not going to do that. I already know, it's sort of like when the doctor's like, okay, well, drink, all this water or do this thing. Is like, I don't know. What are you talking about? I'm not going to do that. And I know it's good for me. And so I really support people in actually taking the journal that everyone tells them to do and taking the intimidation and taking the time factor away from it and support people in journaling to help their health. And I became an expressive writing facilitator. I've also am becoming a certified listening poet. And so I am also working on research projects around writing to heal. And one of the writing to heal scientists, just a small amount of research, Pennebaker, many years ago, came up with this wonderful research around writing to heal. So writing to heal is an actual practice. I got my certification program from Duke University. And the whole premise around writing to heal is that at least 20 minutes of writing each day. Doesn't matter what you're writing about. And it could even be you just writing in the air. Now, how crazy is that? At least 20 minutes supports emotional health and emotional well-being. Also helps with your immune system, and also helps with arthritis, and also supports us in keeping a safe space for ourselves and our thoughts and our memories. Oftentimes we've been talking in health settings and healing settings, safe spaces. Is any space really safe, where I can talk, where I can share? And my whole thing is I really love to hold space for people and create brave, safer spaces, but nothing is as safe as you in the bed with your journal and your pen and writing your thoughts. And so that's what I support people in doing. My major premise is to sit with people who are healing, who are wanting healing, and we all are, whether that's emotional, whether that's physical, mental, social, spiritual, or what have you, and really giving them the tools to do that. And usually it's a journal and a pen and the confidence that you can do this in your bed for 5 minutes every day. Write about whatever. The dog is barking again. And I'm surprised my dog isn't barking again. I shouldn't say that, because the minute I say that, then Gigi's going to be like, oh, mama's calling me. She needs me. I do not need you right now. She thinks I need her. Whenever I call her name or whenever I say bark or something, she's like, oh, you need me. Here I am.
I know. Yeah. So I love that you pointed out that oftentimes we get told to journal and we're like, no, I'm not. Like, I don't know what to write. I don't have the time, What are some tips that you would give individuals who, genuinely would like to take a journey to healing, be it journaling or storytelling or poetry? What are some tips to get them started? What are some things that you would suggest for somebody who wants to do it but doesn't know how or knows if they can commit to it?
Absolutely. There are two things. From tips I would give to people who want to get started, and tips I would give maybe to people who are in the therapeutic, healing, holistic world who suggests that people get started. So to get started, the first thing I would say is writing prompts, some tips and some tidbits, because writing sometimes can take us back to kindergarten when we had to trace those letters. And maybe we didn't have such a great experience with tracing letters because that's not how we write, and that's not developmentally appropriate, right? Or writing maybe takes us back to the English teacher with the red pen, or takes us back to that summer essay. What did you do this summer? And it's like, I did nothing. I don't know. I'm going to be embarrassed because I'm not as good as someone else, or I don't know any grammar, or just like I just messed up grammar right there, right? So people are always judging us. So the first thing I really will give you as a tip and as a tidbit is to take off the cloak and cape of judgment and self-judgment. Writing for yourself is a powerful self-care tool. And the first writing prompt I give anyone, I simply say, write about where you are in your life now. What is your life like now? And now can mean anything, right? Now can mean pandemic, now can mean 8:00 in the morning, getting ready to go to work. And now can mean, on every Zoom meeting. Now can mean really tired and exhausted. Now can mean I'm going to a treatment, or I'm going to therapy. I'm going to chemotherapy. What is your life like now? The second tip that I would give people is embrace your stream of consciousness, right? We have this beautiful stream of consciousness, and we think, well, I don't know what to write, or I'm not going to write right, or I need to write about my emotions, right? Or I need to write about what the therapist was talking about and all my trauma. Don't do that. No. Once you're out of therapy, don't go back home and write about the trauma or put yourself in that space again. It's stream of consciousness, which is simply taking your pen or your pencil or your crayon or what have you to a piece of paper, and whatever comes up out of your intuition, allow it to come out. So the first writing prompt is, where's your life like right now? And then allow your stream of consciousness to begin to write. And of course, a beautiful journal doesn't hurt, right? So find you, if you're like me, I have 3 million journals with like one thing written in all of them, or I'm looking for like, oh, I said something really good. Where did I write that? Whoa, okay, it's one of my million journals, right? Or you might be someone who has everything in one beautiful space. Find a beautiful or delicious or really comfortable journal that you like for yourself. Give yourself that as a self-care gift. Go to the Dollar General, the Dollar Tree, or Paper Source, or Walmart, or Target, and say, this is what I'm going to do for myself. I'm giving myself this beautiful space to write in. And I'm giving myself the writing prompt of where I am now. And I'm taking the self-judgment away. 20 minutes, 10 minutes, 5 minutes, 2 minutes, 30 seconds. Yeah. So those are some tips and tidbits. And then also for therapists and healers and holistic people who are saying, go home and journal. I would say first, call me and I can help you. So if you need someone in your office or in your spaces to begin to create tips and tidbits and sessions around what that really looks like for alternatives to therapeutic practices, or you also, we're thinking about alternatives, we're also thinking about, okay, I'm out of therapy and I'm at home and I'm thinking about all these things and I know I need to write, but I'm totally overwhelmed. Is there someone who can give me a word or a writing prompt? I would say to therapists and holistic healers and those in the wellness environment to simply begin to think of a plan and have that plan written and well thought out to give to your participants and your clients as well. And then also as a writing coach, having maybe a writing coach on hand that can support those processes. That's a lot said. I feel like I'm talking a lot.
No, you're fine. You're fine. It's all valuable information. And I love that perspective, like giving them the steps. Okay, like, yes, journaling is healing. Journaling will help you process your feelings, your emotions, and help you meditate. But everybody doesn't know how to start that. Everybody doesn't like to write. Most people don't even like to read a whole lot, So, everybody doesn't necessarily know how much time they need to do something like that. So giving them those types of prompts and that kind of guidance is definitely something that would benefit them in the longer run, because we can say any day like, oh yeah, I'll just start journaling, and they buy the notebook and they never write in it because they don't know what to put in it. They don't know how to start, where to start, what should I journal? I'm feeling all of these different things, but how do I write it out so it makes sense? So being able to talk through that, goes along with that process. And even if you're just going to blurt it all out on the paper, to know that that's okay, I think would be great to be communicated. So I think you make a very valid point when saying that. So no, you're not talking too much.
Yes. There's no such thing as too much. This is space. We take up all the space, all of us. Yes.
Yes, absolutely. And I noticed on your website that you mentioned, how writing is a tool and it can support the therapy and the medical processes. I know you mentioned it a little bit in the studies that are going on, but could you kind of elaborate on that in ways that it is supporting therapy and medical processes?
Oh, absolutely. So I'm an artist in resident at UAB with the Institute of Arts and Medicine. So artists that come in to support people who are in the healing environment and also in a health wellness space. And so part of what I do as an artist in residence is I go into people's space while they're healing and I ask them, hey, you want to hear a poem? hello, would you like to write with me today? And of course, they turn their head away from me and they're like, no, I'm not writing and poem. Who does that? I mean, the word poem is just like, okay, no. Then I explain, like, I'm a poetry healer. I'm a writer that heals, and we do healing writing. And then I have a pretty journal. It's green. Do you want the purple one? And they're like, ooh, yes, it's just amazing. It's like, oh, yes, you mean I can have that? I'm like, yes, you can have that. And so part of that is working with medical doctors and nurses and social workers and therapists, and on the whole tenets around not just writing, but the whole tenets around writing, trauma writing. And so my background is in trauma-informed writing, trauma-informed storytelling. So everything we do is trauma-informed, which simply means whatever people are going through, we're making sure that we're not doing any hurt, further hurt or harm, or the least amount of hurt and harm that we can do, because we're all human. And in that writing, the process is not to focus necessarily on the trauma or necessarily on the healing or the diagnosis. The focus is to focus on the emotions and the reflection of those emotions. And part of that comes from the research around trauma writing, and how do we express ourselves and how do we process ourselves. And then also, how do we become deeper into our intuition? Like, we're intuitive beings. So part of our health and wellness journey is knowing what decisions we need to make, what processes we need to process those decisions. And writing helps us tap into our intuitive selves. And that's part of research. Also, it helps us with, like I mentioned, boosting our immune systems, helping support us also with our inner child work that we're doing. So if we're doing any therapeutic work with our inner child work, we can begin to talk to that inner child through writing without having to even speak. So there's so many health benefits, emotional wellness benefits, social benefits, self-care benefits, even community wellness benefits. I do writing to heal workshops with groups of people who have gone through similar, healing, spaces, whether it's spinal cord injury, whether it's breast cancer, whether it's depression, whether it's addiction, and bringing together through that community wellness platform, writing as a healing tool to reflect on our emotions, and giving simple journal prompts and realizing that we are all connected through those prompts does something to our brain development and our DNA, but also for our immune system and our nervous system. It causes us to calm down and settle down, and it responds to that stress hormone that we have to give us those happy cortisol that we're all looking for and hoping that we get, yes, without eating a whole chocolate cake, piece of chocolate cake every day, or something, which would be fine if we do. No self-judgment here, So yeah. Yes.
Yeah, well, that's awesome. Thank you for giving us a little insight to that. Also, I know that you are a storyteller and you have lots of stories. So,
Yeah.
what's a story that you would like to share with us about, an example of, a storytelling journey or a journaling journey, and just, the start, the middle, the end, just, tell us a little bit of something.
Oh, absolutely. I have so many stories. Part of some of my work I do is with creatively aging and working in assisted living programs with clients or patients who have perhaps either having dementia or Alzheimer's, or who are lonely. Let's just put it that way. Loneliness. And loneliness is not an age, right? I think I think I was born lonely. I remember my therapist telling me, like, this loneliness may not ever go away. And I think, great, that's what I came here for. I came here to hear that. No, fired therapist, no. But she was being very honest about this whole connection with loneliness, and then how do we find ourselves through this cocoon of socialization and that kind of thing. So I was at this creative aging space, and this beautiful, beautiful woman came out, and she's like, I don't do poetry and I don't write. And I was like, great, you're my perfect candidate. If you don't do poetry, if you don't write, I'm excited about that. I don't want anyone in here who does that, They're gonna mess us up. And so I gave her a journal and some pen and a writing prompt. I think the simple writing prompt was to write a poem about what do you plan to do from a poem about what do you plan to do with your one wild and free life, right? And she was like, my life is over. I am 89 years old. And I was like, okay, well, you still have some time to be wild. You still have some time to continue because you're still here with me. So even if you have, 10 more seconds or 30 more seconds, what do you plan to do? And she began to just write a poem. And after she wrote the poem, I asked her, it's like, would you like to reflect on what emotions or what came up for you when you were writing that? And she said, a memory. She said, I remember writing a poem almost 10 or 15 years ago. I was like, yes, tell me about it. And she said, well, let me go up to my room and go get the poem. And I was like, oh, I really hope she has a poem. Yeah, go, because we're critically aging. So we just go with the flow because it's all healing and health. And we really want to support people in this practice. And she came back down with this plaque and it had this gold emblem on it. And I read it and it said like the White House. And it was very1official. And I was like, and then I read the poem. And at the end, it had the signature George W. Bush, first Bush, Daddy Bush, and I was like, is this your, and it had her name and it was her poem. And I was like, is this your poem? She's like, yes, there was this poem I wrote and I sent it into the White House and they published it and they sent me a plaque back. You don't do, and that just like speechless. I'm like 89 years old. I don't do poetry. I've never written a poem. Okay, well, let's sit here and let's just write about what your day's like. Oh, I remember. Let me go upstairs and get that poem that I sent to the White House that they sent back to me with the gold emblem on. And I was like, you're a poet. I have no published poems at the White House or with plaques or with gold emblem or nothing, And it was so exciting because how that memory came back to her and how she began to talk about like, that's, she used to write poetry and she was brave enough to send it into spaces, not just regular spaces, but to the White House. And I've never seen that before. So that's a story that I promise you is a true story. It's a beautiful 89-year-old woman who's in an assisted living program right here in our region, who's waiting for someone to give a journal and a pen or to come and just read a poem or a journal to remind them, you can keep that diary and that journal again. Yeah. So that's one story, but yeah, many, many more.
Yeah, that's really cool though, and you're just like, and you want me to come and tell you something and you got stuff going to play.
I was like, you got this poem up in your room? Okay, what else you got in your room? I'm like, I need to come and see some more of your accolades and accomplishments. I was so surprised. Yes, and she came back down and didn't forget me. She came back down and knew exactly what we were doing. It's so amazing, like the memory, because poetry and music, the reason why we do the arts and medicine and, of course, and why I'm so excited to always bring it into healing spaces is because of the healing attributes of poetry, of writing, and how it supports our memory, and then how it also supports us and not just healthy, but it also is a social connection. So she remembered me. She remembered the poem. I don't think she remembered my name, but she knew what we were doing and that she had to show me this poem. And she had it in this like hat box. That's how I knew she was legit. Like she's for real. She's OG. She was for real. She had in this beautiful like hat box, and then she like opened it up, and she was living in the assisted living space in her own apartment, and so she was still able to live on her own, but still with some assistance. And she mentioned she's like so many of my things I had to give away, and then she came with that hat box, with that poem from the White House. And I said, oh, well, this is worth it. Writing is worth it. Yes.
Yeah, you never know who you're talking to, and then I think that, you're even just going back to what you said about just how writing something out will bring something back, and that's just, proof. That's the pudding proof.
Yes, absolutely.
So,
yes.
Are there any other tips that you would have for individuals who are looking for these holistic ways to heal, but they don't know, where to go, how to begin, and
Mhm.
anything like that?
Oh, absolutely. So I would always encourage, like, there's more than one way to continue on your healing journey. Most definitely medical, therapeutic, all those different practices. But your intuition will tell you, maybe it's that thing as a little girl. I want to be a writer or a paint, or you were a visual artist, or you used to sing. I have a story of a lady that I work with has a spinal cord injury, and we do Writing to Heal workshops. And one of the things I was talking about is what feeds you, and what's your calling, or what's your passion? Like, if you could eat something right now and it would fill you up and it wasn't food, what would that be? And she started to sing. Now, I was with her for 6 weeks. I don't understand why people don't tell me this stuff in the beginning, how like that they do these things, But after 6 weeks of writing, she began to sing, and she said, "Oh yes, I was a choir director for some big, choir space, and all these wonderful, wonderful, wonderful things, and those kinds of things." And I think that's what my tip would be: write about the thing or the space or the who you are, not the what of what you're going through. Oftentimes it's going to the doctor. I went to the doctor recently because I have rashes on my body or whatever. And, it's always talking about it could be this and it could be that. And then, went to talk to my trauma therapist, and she was like, well, you maybe write about if it is that big thing you think it is. And I thought, I don't want to write about the rashes, because, yeah, I've talked to the doctor about it, and I've talked to you about it, you know. Maybe I write about my emotions around that, my reflection, or the tree outside, or, children going back to school, or maybe I write about that piece of chocolate cake, or maybe it's a stream of consciousness. That's my tip and my tidbit. It's your journal, your diary. When I was a little girl, I had a diary that had a gold key, and I would lock it. I'm in the third grade, locking my little diary when I'm writing. Like, I got a crush on so and so, right? Yeah, I put it underneath my mattress, because God forbid my mom found the diary where I wrote, I don't like washing dishes, and I don't want to, whatever. It's my little girl secrets, right? That's what it is for. I really believe it's my tip and tidbit is your little girl secrets, your little boy's secrets, your tip and tidbits, your everyday life. Tips and tidbits: separate yourself from the trauma or the diagnosis or the pain, and remember the whole self is the intuition of who you are, and write about that. Maybe you got a memoir or a novel. So many people I've worked with. I'm doing something called legacy writing now with a group of people in Miami at one of their libraries. And so I help people write their legacy. These are people who are in palliative care, who have been diagnosed, and who probably think they may not have long to live. And so we're having a good time writing our legacy writing. And everyone said, this can't be fun. We got to be sad. I'm like, says who? We're not just our traumas, are we? We're more than that. There's joy. We've had some happiness in our lives. We had some love in our lives. We've had some good food. We've gone to some good places. We've worn some beautiful clothes. We've changed our hair. We've had some funny times. Legacy. What's that? So those are just my thoughts. It's writing above and beyond the trauma, finding those spaces of joy, and giving yourself the opportunity to unlock that diary. Give yourself the golden key and just begin to write.
Thank you so much, Salaam. I think those are some amazing tips. You have been giving us many gems throughout this conversation today. And we want to thank you for just lending us all of your tips and giving us all of this information that we can use moving forward. And we hope to see you again soon for another coffee conversation.
Yes.
And thank you everyone for joining us today.
Thank you for having me, and thank you everyone for coming and everyone who will see the recording. I'm super, super excited, and I'm also super accessible to help support people on this journey, and I hope continue this work with Forge in any way that we can. So thank you all so much for listening to my stories. Now go and write. Get you a diary, a new diary.
Absolutely. So thank you so much, and we
Thank
will
you.
see everyone next time.